Hi folks, this is Karim Raouf from IT Visualizer channel. You will continue our lab, the Matrix Labs, the video number 53. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have still working with the Purple Knight Active Directory Security Assessment tool, which is a free tool that scans the Active Directory for security issues. We have seen, or we have been discussing for a couple of videos, the different results generated by this tool in this report. So we can see, or we are currently discussing the account security tests, and we are currently at the point of fine grain policy not applied to groups. So this test, what does it do exactly? It will see if there is any fine grain group policies that are not applied to a certain group. What is a fine grain group policy? This is a special password policy that is applied to certain type of users. So for example, the default password policy that is applied to the domain, it has a certain setting, okay, which can be for example, a minimum of 8 characters, complex password, and etc. As for the fine group policy, maybe we need to have more restrictions on the password of the IT. So for example, we are making a second password policy which will be applied only to the IT users accounts, or the users accounts of the IT. For example, the password to be 12 characters, for example, and to be more restrictive. So this is called fine grained group policy. Okay, so here he is checking if there is a fine grained group policy that is not applied to a group. So for example, maybe I have created a fine grained group policy to be applied to my IT personnel, but for some reason this was not applied. Why is this? He is saying that maybe you have changed the IT users group, okay, or the IT Active Directory group was changed from global group type to universal or domain local type. We all know that Active Directory groups, we have different types of Active Directory groups. We have the local or domain local group, we have global group, and we have universal groups. So what will happen? The fine grained group policy is only applied to the global group type of Active Directory groups. So if you change this, okay, or change the type of the Active Directory group to universal or domain local group, the fine grained group policy will not be applied. And this uh, can be used by the hacker to, for example, uh, uh, maybe maybe for example, or this, if it's not applied, maybe the IT, one of the IT will put a weak password so a hacker can take advantage of it. So he's saying changing a group scope setting from global group to universal or domain local group will result in fine grained group policy no longer applied to that group, decreasing its power security controls. So this is one of the things. He is scanning for fine grained group policy in the domain, and he will see if it is applied to a certain group or not. If it is not applied, then we need to see the group's scope setting for this group, if it is global group or universal or domain local group. Okay, so let's see the explanation of Perplexity when I ask it to give me an example to explain this test, or to give us an example, real world example, to explain uh, the dangerous, or what will happen if we have such a situation in our domain, to have a fine grained group policy that is not applied to IT personnel, for example. Let's see what will be the answer of Perplexity, and then we will go with the Claude 3.5. And today we will go with a new ChatGPT model, which is called O1, which is the latest model by OpenAI, and we'll see its results. And I think they are fantastic, and they are have a lot of reasoning more than the previous model. So let's see first the answer of Perplexity.
Understanding FGPP and group scope in Active Directory at Matrix Internal. In the Active Directory environment of Matrix Internal, managing group memberships and their associated password policies is essential for maintaining security. This is particularly true when dealing with fine-grained password policies, FGPP, and the scope of groups, such as universal or domain local groups. Real-world example, FGPP targeting. Imagine that Matrix Internal has implemented FGPP to enforce stricter password requirements for its finance department, which includes a group called Finance Team. This group is a universal group, which means it can include users from any domain within the forest and can be assigned permissions across multiple domains. Changing group scope. Suppose an administrator decides to change the scope of Finance Team from a global group to a universal group to allow members from another domain to join. However, this change has significant implications. Loss of FGPP application. When the group is changed to a universal group, any FGPP that was previously applied to the global group will no longer apply. This means that the stricter password policies set for the finance team will be lost, and the members will revert to the default domain password policy, which may be less secure. Decreased password security. The likelihood of compromise increases because the members of the finance team may now have weaker password controls. If an attacker targets a member of this group, they could exploit the reduced password security, potentially gaining access to sensitive financial data. Likelihood of compromise. The likelihood of compromise is heightened in this scenario for several reasons. Monitoring gaps. Disabled accounts or accounts that are not actively monitored can become targets. If a privileged account is disabled but retains membership in a group that has lost its FGPP, an attacker might attempt to enable the account and exploit its previous privileges. Inadvertent misuse. If the password policy is not enforced correctly, users might choose weaker passwords, making it easier for attackers to gain unauthorized access. Mitigating the risk. To mitigate these risks at Matrix Internal, the organization should consider the following best practices. Regular audits of group memberships. Conduct regular audits to ensure that groups are appropriately scoped and that FGPPs are applied as intended. This includes checking for any changes in group scope that could affect password policies. Educate administrators. Provide training for administrators on the implications of changing group scopes and the importance of FGPPs. They should understand that altering a group scope can lead to decreased security. Implement monitoring tools. Utilize monitoring tools to track changes in group memberships and FGPP applications. Alerts can be set up to notify administrators of any changes that might affect security. Reinforce password policies. Ensure that all groups, especially those with sensitive data access, have appropriate FGPPs applied. This might involve creating new FGPPs specifically tailored for universal or domain local groups, ensuring that password security remains robust. Conclusion. By understanding the implications of FGPP and group scope changes in Active Directory, Matrix Internal can better protect its sensitive data and maintain a secure environment. Proper management of group memberships and their associated password policies is crucial in preventing unauthorized access and potential security breach.
So this is the answer of Perplexity. Let's go and see the answer of Claude. Ask it to explain the same test and see and give us a real-world example to illustrate the results of the test. So let's see the answer of Claude 3.5.
EAD to decrease security for critical user accounts. Copy. Retry. Certainly. Let's explore this concept using a real-world example in the context of Active Directory for the domain matrix.internal. Real-world example. Let's consider Matrix Corporation, a large multinational company with the Active Directory domain matrix.internal. They use fine-grained password policies, FGPP, to enforce different password requirements for different groups of users. Scenario. Initial setup. Matrix Corporation has a group of executives who need stricter password policies. They create a global security group called executive users and apply a fine-grained password policy to this group. FGPP configuration. The IT team sets up an FGPP for the executive users group with the following requirements. Minimum password length, 16 characters. Password complexity, enabled. Maximum password age, 60 days. Password history, 24 passwords remembered. The problem arises. The company expands internationally, and they need to include executives from different domains in their forest. An IT administrator, Bob, decides to change the executive users group from a global group to a universal group to accommodate users from multiple domains. The change. Bob changes the executive users group scope from global to universal. The unintended consequence. By changing the group scope to universal, the FGPP stops applying to this group. This occurs because FGPPs in Active Directory are designed to work only with global groups. The security implication. The executive users are no longer subject to the stricter password policy. They fall back to the default domain password policy, which might be less stringent. For example, the default policy might only require minimum password length, 8 characters. Password complexity, enabled. Maximum password age, 90 days. Password history, 10 passwords remembered. The risk. Executive accounts, which often have higher privileges and access to sensitive information, are now less secure. An attacker might have an easier time compromising these accounts due to potentially weaker passwords. Detection. A security audit tool scanning the matrix that internal domain flags this issue by detecting an FGPP targeted at a universal group, which is ineffective. Mitigation. To resolve this issue, the IT team at Matrix Corporation has a few options. Convert the executive users group back to a global group and find another way to include cross-domain executives. Create separate global groups for executives in each domain and apply the FGPP to each of these groups. Use a different method, such as organizational units, OUs, and group policy objects, GPOs, to apply password policies if cross-domain functionality is absolutely necessary. Learning point. This scenario underscores the importance of understanding how different Active Directory features interact. Changing group scopes can have unintended consequences on security policies, particularly with features like FGPP. This example demonstrates why it's crucial to monitor group scope changes, especially for groups targeted by FGPPs. In the matrix.internal domain, regular audits and change management processes should be in place to prevent such misconfigurations that could lead to decreased security for critical user accounts.
Perfect answer. We see that you have illustrated the test with a more detailed real-world example. Maybe the one provided by Perplexity is not that intense or not that deep. He's explaining the scenario or explaining the test from different or illustrating it in different steps. First, the hacking situation, then how to resolve this issue, and the learning points. Very good explanation, and it's better than Perplexity for sure. So let's see if we can have the same or ask ChatGPT to explain the same test or the same thing. We can see here, this is the prompt. Can you explain this content with a real-world example in the context of Active Directory? For example, we have matrix.internal domain, and then I give him the description of the test and the likelihood of compromise. These two texts or these two texts things, as we can see here. I ask it to explain it and give us a real-world example. So let's see if we take this and ask ChatGPT O1 to explain it. First, we need to go and give it the preview, because we have now it's not in the final release, it's in the preview release. So let's see if we give it this one and ask it to explain it. First, I need to add an L just to make sure that it's correctly spelled. Then let's give it a try. Okay, so we can see it is, I don't know it's faster or not, but anyway, we see the answer is more detailed and a little bit organized. And let's see, or let's read this out loudly and see if the answer is better than Claude or less than it. Let's see. Why it's not working? Let's go and okay, I think it's not working for. Okay, this is a bug here. We can see that actually this model is having some bugs because it's still in the preview, but let's refresh and then try to read it again loudly. Let's see if it will respond or not.
Understanding the impact of group scope changes on fine-grained password policies in Active Directory. Background. In Active Directory AD, fine-grained password policies, FGPP, allow administrators to apply different password and account lockout policies to different sets of users within a single domain. This feature is particularly useful for organizations that require stricter security measures for specific groups of users, such as administrators or users with access to sensitive data. FGPPs can be applied directly to user accounts or to global security groups. However, they cannot be applied to universal or domain local groups. If an FGPP is linked to a group and the group scope is changed from global to universal or domain local, the FGPP will no longer apply to that group. This can unintentionally weaken the security posture by reverting affected users to the default domain password policy, which might be less stringent. Real-world example, Matrix Corp's Active Directory domain, matrix.internal. Imagine Matrix Corp, an organization with an internal Active Directory domain named matrix.internal. The IT security team at Matrix Corp has implemented a stringent password policy for a set of high-privilege users. 1. Creation of a global security group. Group name, privileged users, members, administrative staff, IT personnel, and executives who have access to sensitive systems. 2. Implementation of a fine-grained password policy. FGPP name, high security policy, policy settings. Minimum password length, 14 characters. Password complexity, enabled. Password history, remember last 24 passwords. Maximum password age, 30 days. Account lockout threshold, 3 invalid login attempts. The FGPP is applied to the privileged users global security group. The issue, at some point, an administrator needs to include users from another domain or wants to simplify group management. To achieve this, they change the group scope of privileged users from a global group to a universal group. Impact of the scope change. FGPP no longer applies. Since FGPPs cannot be applied to universal groups, the high security password policy FGPP stops applying to the privileged users group. Reversion to default policy. The users in the privileged users group now fall back to the default domain password policy, which might be significantly less secure, e.g., minimum password length of 8 characters, no password complexity, longer maximum password age. Decreased security controls. The reduction in password policy strength increases the risk of password-related attacks, such as brute force or dictionary attacks. Likelihood of compromise. Increased vulnerability. The weaker password requirements make it easier for attackers to guess or crack passwords. Potential unauthorized access. Attackers gaining access to accounts with elevated privileges can lead to data breaches, unauthorized data manipulation, or further exploitation of the network. Compliance risks. The organization may fall out of compliance with security standards or regulations that mandate strong password policies for privileged accounts. Preventive measures. 1. Monitoring and alerts. Implement monitoring tools that generate alerts when critical groups have their scope changed. Use scripts or third-party solutions to regularly check the group scopes and FGPP assignments. 2. Administrative controls. Limit the number of administrators who have permissions to change group scopes. Implement a change management process that requires approvals for modifications to group scopes and FGPP assignments. 3. Regular audits. Conduct periodic audits of group scopes and password policy applications. Review group memberships and ensure that FGPPs are correctly applied to all necessary groups. 4. Education and training. Train administrators on the implications of changing group scopes. Provide guidelines and best practices for managing groups and password policies. Conclusion. In the context of matrix.internal, changing the scope of a group like privileged users from global to universal or domain local can inadvertently strip away critical password protections provided by an FGPP. This action exposes the organization to increased security risks by weakening password requirements for high-privilege accounts. To maintain a strong security posture, it is essential to ensure that FGPPs remain effectively applied by keeping critical groups as global security groups and monitoring any changes to group scopes. Key takeaways. FGPPs are only applicable to users and global security groups. Changing a group scope to universal or domain local renders the FGPP ineffective for that group. Unintended scope changes can significantly weaken password security controls. Regular monitoring and strict administrative controls are necessary to prevent such security lapses.
I see the answer of the new model O1 seems to be very, very organized. The layout is perfect, but I think the answer of Claude is better, even though it's not that organized. But we can see, I think the new model is the layout of the response or the result of my prompt is much better. We can see ChatGPT 4o don't give this kind of layout. It's more organized. I see it is improving, but I think still Claude, if it releases a more advanced model, for example, maybe Claude 4, for example, Sonnet, I think it will be better than O1. Let's see, or let's wait and see if maybe Anthropic company will get us a new model. So we can see here the answer is very simple, and now we know why this test is important, to make sure that we have our fine-grained group policies applied. Okay, the next test is Forest contains more than 50 privilege accounts. Here he is restricting the creation of privilege accounts. So maybe you have a lot of IT, for example, you need to give them all administrative privileges. So you create a lot of privilege accounts, a lot of domain admin accounts, a lot of enterprise admin accounts. Here is saying that you should not exceed more than 50. I don't know where he has got this limit, but anyway, you need to not to make more of these accounts, because the more you create, the more the probability of one of these accounts to be hacked. Okay, so this is what we are talking about here. The indicator counts the number of privileged user accounts defined in the forest, where 50 is deemed the upper limit for this type of accounts. A privileged account is defined any user with admin count attribute set to 1. So this is domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, local administrator accounts, and any group with this admin count. I think maybe we need to have what are the groups that has admin count 1. So I know by default it is domain admin, enterprise admin, schema admin, but what are the accounts that have, or not the accounts, the groups that has admin count 1? So let's ask Perplexity just to focus on what are these groups. If we go there and ask Perplexity this question, just to make sure what are these that are that have the admin count 1. So let's give it an answer. What are the groups in Active Directory that has admin count attribute set to 1? So let's see this and copy it and see what will be the answer of Perplexity, and then see the answer of Claude, and then the answer of ChatGPT o1. So let's see the answer here. He is saying these I thought so. So most of the default Active Directory groups, for example, domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, local administrators group, account operators, backup operator, server operators, printer operators, replicator, KRBTG, I think this is a group or this is a user. Anyway, so these are all the groups that has the admin count 1. And if you need to know these, to find all accounts in Active Directory with admin count, you can use this PowerShell and it will list you all of the accounts, not the groups. But anyway, this is a good way to know what are the important accounts that are protected by the admin SD holder. Okay, so this is one good thing to. This is the users. Okay, so he give you two PowerShell commands: one to list the users or the users with admin count 1, and the groups with the admin count 1. So very good answer. We can see here it's giving you detailed answer. Okay, how you can get all of these important accounts. So we can know by listing these that these are the things that we need to focus our attention on. We need to focus on the changes made to these groups and the changes made to the members in these groups. The group scope of these groups, I think it will not be changed, but anyway, we need to focus on these. Okay, so this is one good answer. I think it's very good and gives you the references, but let's see if we can copy this and ask Claude to provide an answer. If we go down and let me have another window just to not to interfere with our Claude session. So let's go there and do like that, and let's see the answer of Claude. So here, very simple and straightforward answer. He's saying that these are domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, administrators, account operators, backup operators, printer operators, server operators, domain controllers. So he added maybe the domain controllers, maybe the server operators. I think this was not listed by Perplexity, but anyway, all of these are the default Active Directory security groups, and they are actually having a lot of rights assigned to them. So this is correct. All of these are protected by admin SD holder. So if we go and ask the same question, but before that I need to make sure that the answer of Perplexity. So anyway, so yes, he didn't add replicator and didn't add KRBTG, but also Perplexity didn't add the domain controllers group. So this is also one of the important groups. But anyway, I think these are, they have common. So they have most of the groups listed. If we go to ChatGPT and try to give it the same question and let's see the answer. If we go there and fill it like this, but Claude didn't give us a way to list the important groups and users in our Active Directory. So let's see the answer of. Okay, so he's adding some additional groups. Okay, there is the pre-Windows compatible access. Okay, I think this is also a good one, and I think this is logical to be added. Incoming forced trust builders, read-only domain controllers, certificate publishers. So I think these are all the default Active Directory security groups. And here he is giving a more explanation about why or what is an admin count 1. I think this is answer is is better than Perplexity and better than Perplexity and Claude. Let's see the answer and see what does it say exactly.
Groups in Active Directory with the admin count attribute set to 1. In Active Directory, the admin count attribute is used to identify objects, users or groups, that are considered protected accounts. When the admin count attribute is set to 1, it indicates that the object is protected by the admin SD holder process, which ensures consistent security permissions and prevents unauthorized changes. Common built-in groups with admin count equals 1. The following are the default groups in Active Directory that typically have the admin count attribute set to 1. 1. Administrators. 2. Account operators. 3. Backup operators. 4. Print operators. 5. Server operators. 6. Domain admins. 7. Enterprise admins. 8. Schema admins. 9. Cert publishers. 10. Read-only domain controllers. 11. Incoming Forest Trust builders. 12. Pre-Windows 2000 compatible access. 13. Replicator. 14. Domain controllers. 15. K or BT. Explanation. Admin SD holder protection. The admin SD holder object is a template in Active Directory that holds the security descriptor applied to protected accounts. Every hour, by default, a background process called SDProp compares and resets the permissions on objects with admin count equals 1 to match those of the admin SD holder object. Impact of admin count. Permission inheritance disabled. Objects with admin count equals 1 have permission inheritance disabled to prevent permissions from being altered by parent containers. Consistent security settings ensures that critical accounts maintain consistent and secure permissions, protecting them from potential misconfigurations or malicious changes. Identifying objects with admin count equals 1. To find all groups and users with admin count set to 1 in your Active Directory environment, you can use the following PowerShell command. PowerShell get adect LDAP filter admin count equals 1. Dash properties admin count. Select object name, object class. Considerations. Do not modify admin count manually. Changing the admin count attribute manually is not recommended, as it can interfere with the security mechanisms designed to protect privileged accounts. Custom privilege groups. If you create custom groups and add them to built-in privilege groups, they may inherit the admin count equals 1 setting due to their elevated privileges. Security auditing. Regularly audit accounts with TOD admin count equals 1 to ensure that only necessary objects have elevated protections. Conclusion. The admin count attribute set to 1 is a crucial part of Active Directory's security model, safeguarding privileged groups and accounts from unauthorized permission changes. Understanding which groups have this attribute helps administrators maintain a secure and well-managed directory environment. If you have further questions about the admin count attribute or need assistance with Active Directory security practices, feel free to ask.
Okay, I need to test it in a little bit. I needed to tell it to explain using layman terms. I'll see if this model will explain what is listed here in a simple terms. Let's see, because I have already asked ChatGPT-4o to use or are using the same prompt, so let's see if the new model will give a different result. So I think it's I think the answer seems to be simple. What is Active Directory? And then he's explaining the Active Directory is a company phone book and security guard rolled into one. It keeps track of all of users like employees and computers in the network and controls who can access what resources. Why are some groups special within the system? Certain groups have more power because they can perform important tasks like managing other users or configuring critical settings. Because of their elevated privileges, these groups need extra protection to prevent unauthorized changes that could compromise the entire network. What is admin count attribute? To safeguard these powerful groups, activate use an attribute called admin count. When admin count is set to 1 for a group or a user, it signals that this account is special and need extra security measures. Which groups had admin count set to 1? We have the main groups that typically had admin count set to 1 is administrators, and explaining what they do exactly. This group, they have full control over the network and can make any changes. Domain admin, they manage users and computer across the entire domain network. Enterprise admin, they have top level access in the complex network with multiple domains. Schema admin, they can change the underlying structure of the Active Directory itself. Account operators, they can handle user accounts and groups. Server operators, they can manage server settings and maintenance. Backup operators, they can perform backups and can restore data. Printer operators, they can manage printers and print queues on the network. Read-only domain controllers, they host read-only copies of Active Directory database. KRBTGT, a special account used for purpose authentication process. Why does this matter? Why the admin count one matter? Extra protection. These groups are protected to prevent unauthorized people from changing their permissions, which could lead to security breaches. Consistent security. The system regularly checks these groups to make sure that their security settings haven't been altered. Limited changes. Because of this protection, even administrators might find they cannot modify these groups without following special procedures. What should you do? Be cautious. If you are managing Active Directory, be careful when working with these groups. These group changes can have significant impacts. Understand limitation. Know that standard methods for changing permissions might not work with these protected groups. Seeking guidance. If you need to modify these groups, it might be best to consult with a senior administrator or follow specific guidelines to ensure security isn't compromised. Certain groups in Active Directory, like the VIP of your network, this in simple terms, they have special roles and need extra security to keep everything safe. The admin count one is like a flag that tells the system, hey, keep a close eye on this one. Knowing which groups have this flag helps you understand how to manage your network securely. Okay, so I think this answer is best. Anyway, so we are testing the new model, which is still in the preview section. Let's again go and see the test. Here we are focusing on not to create more than 50 privilege accounts. In general, the more privilege accounts you have, the more opportunities that are for attackers to compromise one of those accounts. 50 is an arbitrary number, but the number should reflect the absolute maximum allowed. If business needs dedicate many privilege accounts, consider implementing a tiered administration model to further isolate those privilege accounts and their potential impact from compromise. A tiered Active Directory model, it's basically dividing or separating every group of privilege accounts from the others. So you have tiered levels. Privileged users that have the most permissions are at the top, and then the less privileged accounts are in the middle, and the last ones are at the bottom, and each one of these is separated from the other. They cannot access or they not communicate with each other, or they cannot access the resources in the section the privilege accounts are there. Anyway, if you need to know more, please see Active Directory tiering model. This is a very, very good model to secure your Active Directory. Okay, so let's see the answer of perplexity when I ask it to explain this test again. Here, this is the answer. Okay, let's read it loudly. Okay.
Managing privileged user accounts in Active Directory at Matrix. Internal. In the Active Directory environment of Matrix, internal, managing privileged user accounts is a critical aspect of maintaining security. Privileged accounts, defined as those with the admin count attribute set to 1, have elevated permissions that can significantly impact the organization's security posture. The upper limit for these accounts is often deemed to be 50, reflecting a balance between operational needs and security risks. Real-world example: privileged accounts at Matrix Internal. Consider a scenario where Matrix Internal has a total of 40 privileged user accounts, including members of groups like domain admins, enterprise admins, and schema admins. Each of these accounts has the ability to make significant changes to the Active Directory environment, such as modifying user permissions, managing group memberships, and accessing sensitive data. Implications of having many privileged accounts. Increased attack surface. With 40 privileged accounts, the likelihood of compromise increases. If an attacker successfully gains access to any of these accounts through phishing, credential theft, or exploiting vulnerabilities, they can potentially escalate their privileges and compromise the entire Active Directory environment. Management challenges. As the number of privileged accounts grows, so does the complexity of managing them. It becomes increasingly difficult to monitor who has access to what resources, making it easier for unauthorized changes to go unnoticed. Potential for abuse. More privileged accounts mean more opportunities for both malicious actors and insider threats. If an employee with a privileged account leaves the organization, their account may remain active and could be exploited. Recommendations for managing privileged accounts. To mitigate the risks associated with having a high number of privileged accounts, Matrix Internal should consider implementing the following strategies. Limit the number of privileged accounts. Aim to keep the number of privileged accounts below the suggested upper limit of 50. Regularly review the necessity of each privileged account and remove any that are no longer needed. Implement a tiered administration model. This model involves creating different levels of access based on the sensitivity of the tasks being performed. For example, separate accounts for administrative tasks can be created, limiting the exposure of highly privileged accounts. Regular audits and monitoring. Conduct regular audits of privileged accounts to ensure that only necessary accounts have elevated privileges. Implement monitoring tools to track the usage of these accounts and alert administrators to any suspicious activities. Enforce the principle of least privilege. Ensure that users have only the permissions necessary to perform their job functions. This principle helps to reduce the number of privileged accounts and minimizes the risk of unauthorized access. Educate users on security best practices. Provide training for administrators and users with privileged accounts on the importance of securing their credentials and recognizing potential security threats. Conclusion. By understanding the implications of having multiple privileged user accounts in Active Directory, Matrix Internal can take proactive steps to secure its environment. Limiting the number of privileged accounts, implementing tiered access models, and conducting regular audits will help reduce the risk of compromise and ensure that the organization maintains a secure Active Directory infrastructure.
So this is a normal answer. I think it's not that best, but let's see the answer of Claude and see if it maybe it will be better. Let's see the answer.
Start new chat. Certainly. Let's explore this concept using a real-world example in the context of Active Directory for the domain matrix.internal. Real-world example. Imagine Matrix Corporation, a large technology company with a complex IT infrastructure managed through Active Directory. Their primary domain is matrix.internal. Scenario. Company structure. Matrix Corporation has grown rapidly over the years. It now has multiple departments, each with its own IT needs. Corporate IT, research and sales, and human resources. Finance, manufacturing, customer support. Privileged account proliferation. As the company grew, the number of privileged accounts, those with admin count equals 1, in the matrix.internal domain increased. 10 domain admins, 15 enterprise admins, 20 schema admins, 30 backup operators, 25 account operators total, 100 privileged accounts. How it happened? Each department insisted on having its own set of admins for emergency purposes. Some managers were given admin rights to expedite processes. Legacy admin accounts from old projects were never decommissioned. Some IT staff created personal admin accounts separate from their regular accounts. The risk. With 100 privileged accounts, the attack surface for Matrix Corporation is significantly increased. Each of these accounts, if compromised, could potentially give an attacker full control over the Matrix.internal domain. Detection. A security audit tool scanning the Matrix.internal domain flags this issue, showing that the number of privileged accounts, 100, far exceeds the recommended maximum of 50. Implications. Higher chance of credential theft. More accounts mean more opportunities for phishing or social engineering attacks. Increased risk of insider threats. More people with high-level access increases the risk of intentional or accidental misuse. Difficulty in monitoring. With so many privileged accounts, it's challenging to effectively monitor and audit their activities. Potential for ghost admins. Unused or forgotten privileged accounts might exist, posing a security risk. Mitigation strategies. To address this issue, Matrix Corporation's IT security team implements several measures. A. Account audit and cleanup. Review all privileged accounts and remove unnecessary ones. Decommission legacy accounts no longer needed. B. Implement a tiered administration model. Tier 0. Domain controllers and critical AD services. Tier 1. Servers and applications. Tier 2. User workstations and devices. This limits the potential impact if a lower tier account is compromised. C. Just-in-time, JIT, and just-enough access, JEA, principles. Implement a privileged access management, PAM, solution to provide temporary, limited admin access when needed. D. Regular access reviews. Conduct quarterly reviews of all privileged accounts to ensure they're still necessary. E. Enhanced monitoring. Implement advanced monitoring and alerting for all actions performed by privileged accounts. F. Separate admin accounts. Ensure all IT staff use separate accounts for admin activities and regular work. Result. After implementing these measures, Matrix Corporation reduces its privileged account count to 40, well below the recommended maximum of 50. This significantly reduces their attack surface and improves overall security posture in the Matrix.internal domain. This example demonstrates the importance of managing privileged accounts in Active Directory. By keeping the number of these accounts to a minimum and implementing proper controls, organizations can significantly reduce their risk of a major security breach. Regular audits and a well-defined privileged access strategy are crucial for maintaining a secure AD environment.
Perfect answer, and better than perplexity answer. Perfect answer. So let's submit. Now we can go and ask ChatGPT 01 or 01 to explain the same test. Here is the prompt, and then copy. Explain this content with real-world example in the context of Active Directory. For example, we have a domain called matrix.internal, and then this description of the test and likelihood of compromisation. Let's see if ChatGPT 01 will give us a good answer. So let's see if the answer is better than Claude. I think Claude is the best from my point of view. All of its answer is very logical and very detailed and covering all of the points. Let's see the answer of ChatGPT 01.
Understanding the impact of too many privileged accounts in Active Directory. Background. In Active Directory, AD, privileged user accounts are those with elevated permissions that allow them to perform critical tasks, such as managing user accounts, configuring systems, and accessing sensitive data. These accounts are essential for the administration and security of the network, but also pose significant risks if compromised. A common way to identify privileged accounts in AD is by checking the admin count attribute. When admin count is set to 1 for a user account, it indicates that the account is protected by the admin SD holder mechanism. This protection ensures that the account maintains consistent and secure permissions, as it often has elevated privileges. Description of the indicator. What it measures. The indicator counts the number of privileged user accounts, those with SAT admin count equals 1 within the AD forest. Upper limit. An upper limit of 50 privileged accounts is suggested. While 50 is an arbitrary number, it serves as a benchmark for organizations to assess whether they have more privileged accounts than necessary. Why it matters. The more privileged accounts you have, the greater the opportunities for attackers to compromise one of them. Each privileged account represents a potential vulnerability. Likelihood of compromise. Increased risk with more accounts. More privileged accounts mean more targets for attackers. If any of these accounts are compromised, the attacker gains elevated access, potentially leading to severe security breaches. Business needs versus security. Sometimes business operations require more privileged accounts. However, it's crucial to balance operational needs with security risks. Real-world example, Matrix Corp's Active Directory domain, matrix.internal. Scenario setup. Imagine Matrix Corp, a company with an Active Directory domain named matrix.internal. 1. Current state. Over the years, Matrix Corp has created numerous privileged accounts for administrators, IT support staff, and special projects. An audit reveals that there are 85 user accounts with admin count equals 1. 2. Potential issues. High number of privileged accounts. With 85 privileged accounts, the company exceeds the suggested upper limit of 50. Increased attack surface. Each privileged account is a potential entry point for attackers. Impact of excessive privileged accounts. Higher likelihood of compromise. More accounts mean more chances that one might have weak security, e.g. a simple password, be misconfigured, or be used negligently. Greater damage potential. Compromising a privileged account can allow an attacker to access sensitive data, modify or delete critical configurations, create backdoor accounts for persistent access, disrupt business operations. Mitigation strategies. 1. Conduct an audit. Identify necessity. Review all privileged accounts to determine if they are necessary. Remove redundancies. Deactivate or remove accounts that are no longer in use or not essential. 2. Implement a tiered administration model. Tier 0, critical privilege, accounts that have access to domain controllers and can make forest-wide changes. Example, domain admins, enterprise admins. Tier 1, high privilege, accounts that manage servers and applications. Example, server administrators. Tier 2, standard privilege, accounts that manage workstations and user support. Example, help desk staff. Purpose, limits the scope of access for each account. Prevents a compromise in one tier from affecting other tiers. 3. Enhanced security practices. Strong authentication. Enforce strong unique passwords. Implement multi-factor authentication MFA for privileged accounts. Regular monitoring. Set up alerts for unusual activities involving privileged accounts. Monitor login attempts, changes in account privileges, and access to sensitive resources. Least privilege principle. Grant the minimum level of access required for a user's role. Regularly review and adjust permissions as roles change. 4. Training and awareness. Educate privileged users about security best practices. Conduct regular training on recognizing phishing attempts and other social engineering tactics. Outcome for Matrix Corp. Reduced number of privileged accounts. After implementing these strategies, Matrix Corp reduces privileged accounts from 85 to 40. Improved security posture. Fewer accounts mean fewer targets for attackers. Tiered model limits the potential impact if an account is compromised. Operational efficiency. Clear roles and responsibilities improve administrative efficiency. Regular audits keep the system clean and up to date. Conclusion. In Active Directory environments like matrix.internal, having too many privileged accounts increases the risk of security breaches. By limiting the number of privileged accounts, keep only those that are absolutely necessary. Implementing a tiered administration model, segregate accounts based on the level of access required. Enhancing security measures, use strong authentication methods and monitor account activities. Organizations can significantly reduce the likelihood of compromise and protect critical assets. Key takeaways. Balance is crucial. While privileged accounts are necessary, they should be limited to reduce risks. Regular audits. Continuously monitor and assess privileged accounts to ensure they are necessary and secure. Adopt best practices. Implement security measures like MFA, least privilege access, and tiered administration to enhance overall security.
This answer is very,
By
very
understanding the importance of managing privileged accounts and taking proactive steps, organizations can better protect themselves against potential attacks and ensure the integrity of their Active Directory environments.
I think this answer is also good. It listed some points that was not listed by Claude. A good answer actually. If we take it, who is the best? I think is Claude, then ChatGPT o1, then the least one is for Perplexity. But this is a very, very good answer. Actually, discovering or seeing a lot of answers from a lot of AI tools will give us a broad view about the topic that we are discussing. Okay, so let's go and continue with other tests. I think we can take another point and then stop at this point. Here, say AD objects created within the last 10 days. Here he's referring to an object. An object is a user or a computer or a group. So he's saying that this indicator looks for an AD object that were created within the last 10 days. It is meant to be used for threat hunting, post-breach investigation, or compliance validation. In some environments, object creation happens consistently. However, recent added accounts should be reviewed to ensure they are legitimate. So he is focusing about the creating of new users or groups or joining computers to the domain within the last 10 days. Normally, we don't create a lot of users in a short period of time, but some environments require that. So he is focusing or just marking this up so you can see if these created accounts are legitimate, was created by your IT staff, or it is created by a hacker. So this is also one of the good tests we can use to monitor the create of the new Active Directory objects. This can be monitored by third-party tools. I think we have a lot of third-party tools that can focus or can monitor this kind of events. So I think I asked Perplexity maybe to explain the same concept, or I did already stop at okay. So I didn't ask it to do that. So if you go to Claude, so anyway, this is very, very, very simple, and we don't need to illustrate it more. So here the test we are focusing about what are the recent created Active Directory objects, and if they are legitimately created or a malicious act. Okay, so this is the test, and then I think we can stop. Here we have, I think, 1 hour. So I think we can stop at this point, which is recent privilege account creation activity. So I will stop at this point and we will discuss it in the upcoming video. Hope this video is informative for you all, and thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.